took it for granted that history is basically an ideological discipline whose job is to serve the state. Now, serving the state was a matter of choice. So, one of the very early things they did was to start talking about things from the point of view of the state, from the point of view of things, talking about things in such a manner that they either ended up supporting the state or they ended up opposing the state, depending on their particular point of view. Now, many of these people say that history, the discipline, intrinsically is ideological in nature. No, that's not true. History is, a discipline is ideological in nature insofar as that any piece of knowledge is ideological in nature. But for a piece of knowledge to be ideological in nature does not necessarily mean that it ceases to be scientific. For example, there is this marvelous interview that Irfan Habib gave to the one of the Rajya Sabha, Lok Sabha TVs, which was broadcast during the Indian History Congress session in Delhi. In this interview, Professor Habib is asked a similar question, and Irfan Habib says that the historian is faced with the problem that there may be 5,000 pieces of facts available to the historian, but the historian chooses only 50 of them to narrate the story. Now the trouble is this: the moment you choose only 50 to narrate the story, you become unscientific. Your story should be such that even when you choose only 50 of those, it should reflect the reality of the 5,000, because 5,000 is available. So that is one thing. History in India, the moment the historians of India decided that their job is to serve the state or to oppose the state, the moment they decided that ideology is the most important thing, from that moment onward, they ceased to be scientific in the true sense of science. Historians of India have been historians of India. Some of them have been overtly aligned to the left, some of them have been overtly aligned to the right, and a majority of them have not been aligned anywhere. The ones who have been overtly aligned to the left, Romila Thapar is one big example, have taken great care to ensure that their history does not necessarily serve only the political purpose, but have also ensured that history is a much vaster discipline in which the practice of history is based on science. Remember, I gave you the example of Irfan Habib. Irfan Habib's own practice of history is pretty scientific. However, when Irfan Habib theorizes about history in the manner that he does, what happens is that a large number of students of such historians end up doing that kind of nonsense history which is completely meaningless. As a consequence, what has happened is, over the years, in India, we have not had enough historians. The number of historians in India is abysmally low. The number of historians who write good history is even less than that. And that is something that needs to be rectified. Bipin Chandra's history, for example. Bipin Chandra was overtly saying that I would support the Congress party and its programs. And yet the history that he wrote was pretty scientific, in which he took care to take into account sociological truths about India, ideological facts about India, and the details about India. And one of the major complaints that most of these historians had was that those who were challenging them on ideological grounds, you see, the challenge can come from two kinds of sources. One is factual challenge, you find a data which is different and you come up to the historian and you tell the historian that there is this new data. The other is ideological challenge. And their complaint has been that these people, the ideological challengers, simply don't come up with information. All that they say is, they say that whatever I'm claiming to be, I've read this in Wikipedia, and therefore whatever I've read in Wikipedia is supposed to be the truth. Now that is not true. That is the most stupid way of doing history. To pick up one sentence here, one sentence there from some text. Ancient, medieval really doesn't matter. You don't establish the text in its social context. You don't establish the text in its time context. And you simply say, and you pick up a stray sentence from the text and you viciously put it forward to create your own version of history. That is the most unscientific way of doing history. Unfortunately, the ideological challengers to people like Bipin Chandra, Romila Thapar, Irfan Habib have been more of this variety than those who do scientific history. Scientific historians have been building upon the past. The ideological challengers have not been building upon past knowledge, they have simply been asserting whatever comes to their mind. With the internet and the social media coming up, everyone has access to information. And once you have access to information, then you are free to assert that whatever you have read on Wikipedia or whatever has been submitted to you in an email or a Facebook posting is actually the truth. In many cases, God's given truth. And a larger number of people use it to completely mislead everyone. The 2-3 very lively cases which exist in India. One is that circulation of the email. Earlier it used to be the email, now there's a proper image to it, about how Macaulay created a scheme to demolish India and her culture. Now this is the way old nationalist argument about what Macaulay said about India, and it is completely fabricated. It is fabricated to the extent that the people who are fabricating it don't even have the correct spellings put over there. It is easy to check all these details, and the statement that Macaulay was talking about all this in the British Parliament, that's absolute nonsense. Macaulay was not talking about any such thing in the House of Commons. This is easily available information also on the internet. But those who check out the internet for truths on the basis of which they can create their own weird version of history, they are seldom interested in checking out anything. Images, for example. Photoshopped images do the rounds, and people seem to accept that Indians, my perception is, Indians are very innocent people. Any body of people who can so easily accept any given statement coming on the internet without verifying its veracity, without trying to bother about what it means, what is the objective behind it, such a people needs to be educated to be less innocent. They should have more scientific thinking. Scientific thinking is the crux of it, and that needs to be inculcated. The common people have access to languages. They can learn a language if they wish to read something. So that's not a problem. And in India, the good thing is that more than historians, it's the common people who know multiple languages. So they should be able to do it. Many of these sources now are not professional sources isolated in very strict archives. Many of the archival material is already available on the internet. The Punjab Digital Library, for example, is putting up close to anything and everything that they can find on the internet. Similar projects are doing the rounds all over the world, documenting Indian history. Books are available on the internet now. The Digital Library of India provides access to a large number of books. Similarly, all the data coming from the House of Commons is available now. The National Archives is a public archive. You can just walk into the archives with your ID papers and look at a document which is available for public viewing. The archives at the state level are available. So in case anyone wants to do a rigorous kind of a check, it is possible to do a rigorous check of much of the information which the historians talk about. This notion that only professional historians who have done an MA in history, who have done a PhD in history, they can engage with the subject of history, excuse me, this is a completely false notion. The scientific ways of doing history, anyone can learn those ways of doing history, and please practice that. Whatever you write or whatever you talk, this will be evaluated on the basis of its scientificity, not on the basis of whether you are affiliated with the BJP or the RSS or the Muslim League or the Congress Party or the left parties. It has to be evaluated for the information that it contains. It has to be evaluated for its internal consistency and its consistency with respect to the rest of the world around it. That is the way to do history. Part of one such project. I wrote the history textbook for the Rajasthan government. That was when the Congress Party was in power. Those books were not changed when the BJP came to power, because the books were done rigorously, properly, factually based. We made efforts to be accurate. We made serious efforts to understand what the people of Rajasthan wanted to know about. We actually conducted seminars and sessions with the people of Rajasthan, with the school teachers, and on the basis of 1 year-long consultation with them. 1 year-long consultation bole to, we used to meet almost every month. And after that we wrote those textbooks, and the books were primarily drafted by the school teachers of Rajasthan. On the basis of information that we provided, we corrected their information, we added more stuff to it, we modified their presentation, etc., etc. But those books were strongly documented books, books which were reasonably well written. You have to have an ideological commitment. The commitment has to be to the Constitution of India. The commitment cannot be to Aurangzeb or Maharana Pratap or to Akbar. We also said that these books need to be revised. We didn't say that these books are the final truth of the subject. But the revision has to be done through systematic analysis, systematic collection of data, And I think that's what we did. In fact, come to think of it, we were the first set of textbooks which actually had a whole chapter on Maharana Pratap. Not a whole chapter, but yes, a significant part of the chapter. Simply because people in Rajasthan were familiar with Maharana Pratap. They wanted to know about Maharana Pratap and the kind of heroism that he was doing. Now, whether Maharana Pratap was actually heroic or not, that is for you to decide as a reader. But as a historian, I can tell you what are the various things that he was involved in, what all that he did. You please come to your own conclusions as a reader. I'm not going to tell you whether he was heroic or whether he was a darpok aadmi who ran away from the forces of Akbar. But what I can give you is a lot of definitive information. See, there are 2-3 levels of things. One is the historian's own procedure. The historian's own procedure is very simple. Be scientific about it. What is scientific way of doing history? Scientific way of doing history is collect your data, as much data as you can. Integrate the data into your argument as much as you can on the basis of some integrative principle. Then also determine at the same time that your data is accurate. Don't presume that all data can be anything and you really don't need to check out things and the opinion of A is as good as the opinion of B. That's not true. So, and in the same way as a journalist that you sit down and verify facts, the historian needs to verify facts also. The big difference between the journalist's verification of facts and the historian's verification of facts is the moment you discover a written document or the moment you discover a source which is giving you information, you stop your verification. The historian has to take a few steps more than that and also notice whether this source is trying to mislead someone, what is the context from which this information is coming, what is the time frame from which this information is coming, and what might be the objective of this information. Because if the information is coming as a consequence of some definite objective, then I would say that the kind of method which Weber suggested for sociology, formal, proper method of sociology, that is something which is indispensable to the historian. Historians need to read Weber a lot, historians need to understand the sociological method a lot, and then historians need to use that, because that is the way the historical research is done. Then after that, historians can go their own way. Some people will be reading about politics, some people will be reading about economics, some people will be reading about the influence of geography. Whatever specific area you go into, there will be further tools from that specific discipline. Please use those tools as you would. Historians, for example, are very, very poor in reading statistics. Historians of India simply are not trained in statistical methods. Historians of India simply are not trained in sociological methods. Historians of India simply are not trained in psychological methods. All this training needs to be given to the historians of India. And since the history that they write essentially remains ideologically driven history, that opens them up to a large amount of attack from all sides. Because ideologically driven history written from the RSS viewpoint is just about as nonsensical as the ideologically driven history written from the left viewpoint. And if the historians, the source of the integrative principle with which the historian is working are not integrative principles which have been worked out systematically, theoretically they have not been worked out properly. All that the theoretical thing that the historian has done is to read Karl Marx and Antonio Gramsci and a handful of Marxist scholars from Europe, then excuse me, that is a very, very poor substitute for any theoretical understanding of human behavior. If we are thinking about people joining MA history classes, doing PhDs in history and then becoming historians, then the future is very dark, because history is a contracting discipline to that extent. However, if we are thinking of opening up the subject to the general public, involving the public at large, it is a very bright subject because Indians by nature are very interested in history. They're constantly talking history, they're constantly fighting over history, they're constantly thinking about doing something in history. The important thing is to teach these Indians how to do this task systematically. It's like crowdsourcing the subject. We need to a lot of crowdsourcing the subject. Maybe on Facebook you've come across my India history page where we talk about history and thousands of people write to us, ask us queries about historical subjects, and we give them information, we give them examples. Rabindranath Tagore was a major figure in early 20th century advertisements. Rabindranath Tagore was selling hair oil, Rabindranath Tagore was selling kapda, Rabindranath Tagore was selling toothpaste. So we provided this information, and someone from Calcutta came back and said, I depend on your page to provide me accurate information. When I mentioned this to a friend of mine, my friend said that no, this cannot happen. Gurudev cannot involve himself in such things. This is like in the period before the non-cooperation movement. Rabindranath Tagore is already a big man and an intellectual of India. So we provided that man with 500 images of Rabindranath Tagore with advertisements. So not bad. It's not that difficult because you can keep on cross-checking information from other kind of sources also. Think about this whole thing of the finding the Saraswati River. If the Saraswati River, if this trench that they are digging up, this is the Saraswati River, well and good. If it is not the Saraswati River, well and good. But this particular stretch has been identified through memories which had been embedded in the gazetteers, memories which had been talked about during Mughal times. So why does the historian keep on saying, ye to research honi hi nahi chahiye? The historian should not be saying that this research should not be done. The historian should be saying, okay, this is a part of a narrative that has come to us. Now let us investigate it properly, systematically, and see whether it is accurate or not, or whether this is just so much time pass. Both ways, one way or the other, the more systematic answer will come. And there is no reason for the historian to presume that the public will not be able to understand a reasonable answer.